The courtroom was buzzing with energy, a mix of murmurs and whispers filling the air. People sat on wooden benches, craning their necks to get a better view of the man standing in front of Judge Patricia Monroe. His name was Leavitt, a scruffy-looking guy in his late 30s with messy hair and an unkempt beard that made him look like he hadn't slept in days. He wore a wrinkled shirt, its collar open, and his tie hung loosely around his neck. Despite his disheveled appearance, there was something about him, perhaps the glint in his eyes, that suggested he wasn't someone who backed down easily. Leavitt had become infamous overnight. A few weeks earlier, during a live podcast, he'd made some sharp and controversial remarks about President Biden. At first, people thought it was just another rant from someone trying to make a name for himself online. But when clips of his comments went viral, things escalated quickly. What started as a joke turned into a national scandal, with calls for consequences echoing across social media and news outlets. Now here he was, facing a judge who didn't seem amused at all. Judge Patricia Monroe adjusted her glasses and looked down at Leavitt with a stern expression. Her voice carried authority as she addressed him. "Mr. Leavitt," she began, pausing briefly to let her words sink in. "You have shown a blatant disregard for civility and respect. Your actions are not only offensive, but also undermine the dignity of the office of the presidency." Leavitt shifted uncomfortably, his hands shoved deep into his pockets. He glanced at the crowd behind him, searching for sympathetic faces, but most of them avoided eye contact. Some even seemed to glare at him, their expressions filled with anger or disgust. Feeling cornered, he muttered under his breath, loud enough for those nearby to hear. "It was just a joke. Can't people take a joke anymore?" The judge's gavel came crashing down onto the wooden surface of her desk, silencing the room. Instantly. "This is no laughing matter, Mr. Leavitt," she said sharply. "For your deliberate insult to the office of the presidency, I hereby fine you $100,000. A collective gasp rippled through the courtroom. Even Leavitt froze, his jaw dropping slightly as if he couldn't believe what he was hearing. $100,000? That amount might as well have been $1 million for someone like him, a struggling podcaster living paycheck to paycheck. He stammered, trying to find the right words to argue his case. "Your Honor, please, and this is ridiculous. I didn't mean any harm. It was satire." But Judge Monroe wasn't swayed. She leaned forward, her gaze piercing. "Satire or not, your words carry weight, Mr. Leavitt. And in this country, we hold our leaders in high regard. If you cannot respect that, then you must face the consequences." As the judge finished speaking, Leavitt felt a surge of frustration bubbling inside him. He clenched his fists, his knuckles turning white. This wasn't fair. All he'd done was speak his mind, something he believed everyone had the right to do. How could they punish him for that? Before he could stop himself, he blurted out, "This is tyranny. You're punishing me for exercising my freedom of speech." His outburst caused another stir in the courtroom. Reporters scribbled furiously in their notebooks while cameras flashed, capturing every moment of the drama unfolding before them. Judge Monroe raised her hand, signaling for silence. When the room finally settled, she spoke again, her tone colder than before. "Mr. Leavitt, you will show proper respect in my courtroom. Do I make myself clear?" Leavitt opened his mouth to respond, but before he could say anything, something unexpected happened. 7 minutes had barely passed since the judge announced the fine, yet suddenly a tall figure stepped forward. It was Agent Bondi, a man dressed in a perfectly tailored suit that screamed authority. His presence commanded attention, and his movements were silent and calculated. Without warning, he pulled out a pair of handcuffs and approached Leavitt. "What are you doing?" Leavitt demanded, taking a step back. His heart raced as panic set in. "You can't arrest me for this." Bondi didn't answer immediately. Instead, he grabbed Leavitt's wrist firmly and secured the handcuffs around them. The metal clicked shut, trapping Leavitt in place. As he struggled against the restraints, Bondi leaned closer, his voice low and menacing. "It's not about what's legal anymore," he whispered. The words sent chills down Leavitt's spine. He looked around desperately, hoping someone would intervene, but no one moved. The reporters continued snapping photos, and the spectators watched in stunned silence. Even Judge Monroe remained seated, her expression unreadable. For a brief moment, Leavitt wondered if he'd misjudged the entire situation, if this was more than just a court case gone wrong. Bondi tugged on the handcuffs, forcing Leavitt to follow him. As they walked past rows of onlookers, Leavitt shouted, over his shoulder, "This isn't justice, you'll regret this." But his protest fell on deaf ears. The heavy wooden doors of the courtroom swung open, revealing a team of agents waiting outside. They surrounded Leavitt, forming a tight circle as they led him away. Once outside, Leavitt squinted against the bright sunlight. A black SUV idled nearby, its engine humming softly. The vehicle was unmarked, without license plates or any indication of who owned it. 2 more agents stood beside it, their faces hidden behind dark sunglasses. Leavitt hesitated as Bondi nudged him toward the car. "Where are you taking me?" he asked, his voice trembling. Bondi didn't reply. He simply opened the door and pushed Leavitt inside. As the door slammed shut, Leavitt found himself trapped in the back seat, flanked by 2 imposing figures. The car started moving, weaving through the busy streets of Washington, D.C., until it disappeared into a maze of alleys and industrial zones. For the first time in his life, Leavitt felt truly powerless. He didn't know where he was going or what awaited him, but one thing was certain. Whatever trouble he'd gotten himself into, it was far bigger than he'd imagined. The black SUV sped through the streets of Washington, D.C., its tinted windows shielding Leavitt from the outside world. He sat slumped in the back seat, his hands still cuffed behind him, staring at the floor as his mind raced with questions. Where were they taking him? Who was Agent Bondi, and why had he been so quick to arrest him? None of it made sense. All Leavitt could think about was how quickly everything had spiraled out of control. From a dumb joke on a podcast to being dragged away like a criminal. The 2 agents sitting beside him didn't say a word. They were stone-faced, their eyes fixed ahead, as if they weren't even aware of his presence. Every time Leavitt tried to speak, one of them shot him a glare that silenced him instantly. The silence in the car was suffocating, broken only by the hum of the engine and the occasional sound of tires crunching over gravel. After what felt like hours, the SUV turned off the main road and onto a narrow, bumpy path. Leavitt pressed his face against the window, trying to get a glimpse of where they were headed. Outside, the scenery changed dramatically. Gone were the tall buildings and bustling streets of the city. Instead, there were dense trees lining both sides of the road, their branches forming a canopy overhead. The farther they drove, the more isolated the area became. Finally, the vehicle came to a stop in front of a large, unmarked building, surrounded by high fences topped with barbed wire. Leavitt's heart sank as he took in the sight. This wasn't just some random detention center. It looked like something out of a spy movie. Armed guards patrolled the perimeter, their rifles slung over their shoulders. Cameras mounted on poles swiveled back and forth, scanning every inch of the property. It was clear that whoever ran this place didn't want visitors or escapees. Bondi stepped out of the car first, motioning for the other agents to bring Leavitt along. As they pulled him out of the SUV, Leavitt stumbled slightly, his legs stiff from sitting for so long. "What is this place?" he asked, his voice shaky. No one answered. Instead, they marched him toward the entrance, where a heavy steel door slid open automatically. Inside, the building was cold and sterile, with fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. The walls were painted a dull gray, and the air smelled faintly of disinfectant. Leavitt was led down a series of hallways, each one identical to the last, until they reached a small room with a metal table and 2 chairs bolted to the floor. One of the agents pushed him into a seat and left without saying a word. Leavitt sat there alone, his mind racing with fear and confusion. A few minutes later, the door opened again, and a woman walked in. She looked to be in her mid-30s, with short brown hair and sharp features. She wore a white lab coat and carried a clipboard, her demeanor calm but unsettling. "Good afternoon, Mr. Leavitt," she said, her voice smooth and professional. "My name is Claire Harper. I'll be overseeing your stay here." Stay? Levitt repeated, his voice rising. What do you mean, stay? I haven't done anything wrong. You can't just kidnap me and lock me up. Claire didn't react to his outburst. Instead, she pulled out a chair and sat across from him, placing the clipboard on the table. Let me explain something to you, she said, leaning forward slightly. You've been selected for a very important project. Think of it as an opportunity, a chance to contribute to something much bigger than yourself. What kind of project? Levitt demanded, his frustration boiling over. And why am I here? What did I do? Claire smiled faintly as if amused by his questions. It's not about what you've done, Mr. Levitt. It's about who you are. Your behavior, your attitude, your willingness to challenge authority. All of these traits make you an ideal candidate for our research. Research? Levitt echoed, his stomach sinking. What kind of research? Claire tapped her pen against the clipboard before answering. We call it Project Echo. Its purpose is to study the effects of stress, disinformation, and psychological manipulation on individuals who question societal norms. People like you. Levitt stared at her, disbelief written all over his face. You're telling me you brought me here to experiment on me? That's insane. It's necessary, Claire replied calmly. In today's world, we need to understand how people react when pushed to their limits. Your role is simple. Participate in our tests, and we'll monitor your responses. The data we collect will help us better predict human behavior in extreme situations. This isn't science, it's torture, Levitt shouted, jerking against the handcuffs. I'm not doing anything for you. Claire sighed as if dealing with a stubborn child. Mr. Levitt, resistance is futile. Whether you cooperate or not, the experiments will proceed. However, if you choose to work with us, we may consider reducing your sentence once the project is complete. My sentence? Levitt spat. What sentence? I didn't commit a crime. That's debatable, Claire said coolly. But let's not waste time arguing semantics. You'll begin your first session tomorrow morning. Until then, you'll be taken to your quarters. Before Levitt could respond, 2 guards entered the room and hauled him to his feet. They dragged him down another hallway and stopped in front of a heavy metal door. One of them swiped a keycard and the door clicked open. Inside was a small, windowless cell with a cot, a sink, and a toilet. There were no decorations, no personal touches, just bare concrete walls and a single light bulb, hanging from the ceiling. As the guards shoved him inside and locked the door behind them, Levitt collapsed onto the cot, his mind reeling. How had he ended up here? One stupid comment on a podcast had turned his life upside down. He thought about Judge Monroe's ruling, Bondi's cryptic warning, and now this bizarre facility hidden in the middle of nowhere. Nothing about this situation seemed real, yet here he was, trapped in a nightmare he couldn't wake up from. Hours passed, though Levitt lost track of time. The lack of windows made it impossible to tell whether it was day or night. He lay on the cot, staring at the ceiling, trying to piece together what little information he had. Was this some kind of government conspiracy? A secret program run by rogue agents? Whatever it was, it scared him more than he cared to admit. Eventually, exhaustion took over, and Levitt drifted into an uneasy sleep. But even in his dreams, he couldn't escape the feeling of dread that clung to him like a shadow. When he woke up, groggy and disoriented, he found a tray of food waiting for him near the door. It consisted of bland oatmeal, a slice of bread, and a cup of water. Hunger gnawed at his stomach, but he hesitated before eating. Was the food safe? Could it be drugged? Deciding he had no choice, Levitt ate slowly, savoring each bite despite its tastelessness. As he finished, the door opened again, and a guard appeared. Time for your session, the man said gruffly, gesturing for Levitt to follow him. Levitt obeyed reluctantly, his legs trembling as he stood. He was led to a different room this time, larger and filled with strange equipment. Monitors lined the walls, displaying graphs and numbers he didn't understand. In the center of the room was a chair connected to wires and sensors. Claire stood nearby, watching him with an unreadable expression. Sit down, she instructed, pointing to the chair. We're going to start with a basic stress test. Don't worry, it won't hurt much. Leavitt hesitated, his pulse quickening. What exactly are you planning to do to me? Claire smiled again, that same faint, unsettling smile. You'll see soon enough. As Leavitt reluctantly settled into the chair, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was stepping into something far beyond his control. Whatever Project Echo entailed, it was clear he wasn't leaving anytime soon. Leavitt sat in the chair, his body tense as Claire and a team of technicians prepared him for the first test. Wires were attached to his temples, chest, and wrists, their cold metal tips sending shivers down his spine. He glanced around the room, searching for any sign of an escape route, but there was none. The walls were solid, the door guarded by two stern-faced agents who watched him like hawks. Relax, Mr. Leavitt, Claire said, her tone calm but firm. This won't take long. Easy for you to say, Leavitt muttered under his breath. His hands gripped the arms of the chair tightly, his knuckles turning white. He wanted to scream, to fight back, but deep down he knew it was pointless. These people weren't going to let him go, not until they got what they wanted. Claire ignored his comment and turned to one of the technicians. Begin the simulation, she instructed. A screen flickered to life in front of Leavitt, displaying a series of images and videos. At first they seemed random, a clip of a political debate, a photo of a protest, a headline about a scandal. But soon they began to focus on him. There were screenshots of his podcast, comments from social media, even fake news articles written about him. Some praised him as a hero standing up against tyranny, while others labeled him a dangerous troublemaker. The conflicting messages made his head spin. What is this? Leavitt asked, his voice rising. What are you trying to do? We're testing your resilience, Claire explained. How you respond to stress, criticism, and manipulation. As the simulation continued, the content became more intense. Fake tweets accused him of being a traitor, while doctored videos showed him making inflammatory statements he never actually said. Leavitt's heart pounded in his chest as he struggled to separate fact from fiction. Was this really happening, or was it all part of the experiment? He couldn't tell anymore. The final phase of the test involved hallucinogenic drugs administered through a patch placed on his arm. Within minutes, Leavitt felt dizzy and disoriented. The room seemed to shift and twist around him, the walls closing in. Voices whispered in his ear, some familiar, others completely alien. They called him names, questioned his motives, and mocked his beliefs. It was maddening, overwhelming, and exactly what Claire intended. When the session finally ended, Leavitt slumped in the chair, drenched in sweat and breathing heavily. His mind was a jumble of thoughts and emotions, none of them clear. Claire approached him, holding a clipboard. How do you feel? She asked, her voice clinical. How do I feel? Leavitt repeated, his words slurred. Like I've been run over by a truck. Claire nodded, jotting something down on her clipboard. Good. That means the drugs are working. We'll monitor your reactions overnight and proceed with the next phase tomorrow. Leavitt barely registered her words. He was too exhausted to argue, too confused to think straight. 2 guards escorted him back to his cell, where he collapsed onto the cot and fell into a restless sleep. Days passed in a blur of tests and interrogations. Each session pushed Leavitt further to the brink, testing his mental and emotional limits. During one particularly grueling exercise, he was placed in a pitch-black room and subjected to loud, jarring noises designed to induce panic. In another, he was forced to watch hours of manipulated footage showing the world reacting violently to his supposed actions. Riots broke out, governments collapsed, and innocent people suffered, all because of him, or so the simulation claimed. Despite the torment, Leavitt refused to give up completely. Deep down, he clung to a shred of defiance, determined not to let them break him entirely. He began paying closer attention to his surroundings, looking for patterns or weaknesses he could exploit. One night, as he lay awake in his cell, he overheard fragments of conversation through the thin walls. I don't trust Sloane, a male voice whispered. She's been asking too many questions. She's harmless, another voice replied. Besides, we need her to keep the files organized. Still, we should keep an eye on her if she leaks anything." The voices faded, but Leavitt's ears perked up. Sloan? Who was that? And why were they worried about her leaking information? For the first time in days, a spark of hope ignited within him. If there was someone inside this facility questioning the program, maybe, just maybe, he could find a way to reach them. Over the next few days, Leavitt played along during his sessions, pretending to cooperate while secretly gathering clues. He noticed small details, the nameplates on lab coats, the passwords technicians typed into computers, the way certain employees avoided eye contact. Slowly, he pieced together bits of information. One name kept coming up: Rachel Sloan. During his next session with Claire, Leavitt decided to take a risk. As she reviewed his latest results, he spoke up. "You know, I've been thinking," he said casually. "If you're studying human behavior, shouldn't you also study the people running the experiments? Like, for example, Agent Sloan." Claire froze, her pen hovering above the clipboard. For a moment she didn't respond, her expression unreadable. Then she smiled faintly. "Agent Sloan has nothing to do with your case, Mr. Leavitt. Focus on yourself." But Leavitt saw the flicker of unease in her eyes. He had struck a nerve. That night, as he lay in his cell, he devised a plan. Using a piece of broken plastic from his meal tray, he managed to pick the lock on his handcuffs. It wasn't perfect, but it gave him enough freedom to move without drawing suspicion. The next day, during a routine transfer between rooms, he deliberately knocked over a cart of equipment, creating a distraction. While the guards scrambled to clean up the mess, he slipped away, ducking into a nearby supply closet. Inside, he found a computer terminal left unattended. Desperate, he typed in the most common password he'd overheard: Echo 123. To his surprise, the screen lit up. Quickly, he searched for files related to Project Echo and found encrypted documents detailing its purpose, methods, and key personnel. Using basic steganography techniques he'd learned years ago, he embedded the data into an image file and sent it to an anonymous email address he'd memorized before his arrest. He didn't know if anyone would receive the message, or if it would make a difference, but it was the best he could do. Moments later, the door burst open and guards dragged him back to his cell. Despite the setback, Leavitt felt a glimmer of satisfaction. He had fought back, however small the act might seem. Unbeknownst to him, his message reached its destination. Rachel Sloan, a former intelligence analyst disillusioned by Project Echo, opened the email and gasped at its contents. She immediately contacted Daniel Meyer, a journalist known for exposing government corruption. Together, they began digging deeper, uncovering evidence that could bring the entire operation crashing down. Meanwhile, Leavitt remained trapped in the facility, enduring more tests and interrogations. But something had changed within him. He no longer felt like a helpless victim. He had planted a seed of resistance, and though he didn't know it yet, that seed was already beginning to grow. Leavitt's body was worn down, his mind stretched thin from days of relentless testing and manipulation. The experiments had taken their toll. He looked gaunt, his eyes hollow, his movements sluggish. But despite the physical exhaustion, there was a flicker of determination in him that hadn't been there before. He had sent out the encrypted message, and though he didn't know if anyone had received it, he clung to the hope that someone somewhere was working to expose Project Echo. That tiny spark of defiance kept him going. Claire noticed the change in him, too. During one session, she leaned closer, studying his face with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. "You seem different today," she said, her voice calm but probing. "What's changed?" Leavitt forced a weak smile. "Maybe I'm finally getting used to all this," he replied, his tone casual. Inside, though, his heart raced. He knew he couldn't let his guard down, not now. If Claire suspected anything, she might tighten security or cut off communication entirely. He had to play along, act like nothing unusual had happened. But Claire wasn't convinced. She glanced at the monitors displaying his vital signs. His heart rate was elevated, his breathing shallow. Something was off, and she intended to find out what. "Let's try something new today," she announced, gesturing for the technicians to adjust the equipment. "We'll see how well you handle uncertainty." The next simulation was unlike anything Leavitt had experienced before. Instead of fabricated news clips or manipulated footage, the screen in front of him went blank. For several minutes there was nothing. No sound, no visuals, just an empty void. Then, slowly, shapes began to form. They were abstract at first, swirling patterns that shifted and morphed into recognizable images. A man appeared on the screen, his face blurred but vaguely familiar. "Do you know who this is?" Claire asked, her voice soft but insistent. Leavitt squinted, trying to make sense of the image. It reminded him of someone, but he couldn't quite place it. "No," he admitted. "Should I?" The man's face became clearer, revealing sharp features and piercing eyes. It was Agent Bondi, the same man who had cuffed him in the courtroom. "This is one of our lead operatives," Claire explained. "He's been monitoring your progress closely. Tell me, Mr. Leavitt, does seeing him make you feel anxious? Angry?" Leavitt shrugged, feigning indifference. "Not really. Why should it?" Claire tilted her head, her expression unreadable. "Interesting. Let's move on then." As the simulation continued, more faces appeared on the screen, some familiar, others not. Among them was Rachel Sloan, the whistleblower whose name Leavitt had overheard. Her photo was grainy, clearly pulled from some old file, but it was unmistakably her. Leavitt's stomach tightened as he stared at the image. Did they know about her involvement? Was she in danger? When the session ended, Leavitt returned to his cell, his thoughts racing. He replayed every detail of the simulation in his mind, searching for clues. Why had they shown him those specific images? Were they testing his reactions, or was it something more sinister? He couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out, not just for him, but for Rachel and whoever else might be working to expose the truth. Meanwhile, outside the facility, Rachel Sloan and Daniel Meyer worked tirelessly to piece together the information Leavitt had sent. The encrypted files contained damning evidence about Project Echo, including its objectives, funding sources, and key personnel. But exposing the program wouldn't be easy. They needed concrete proof, something undeniable that would force authorities to take action. Rachel spent hours poring over the documents, cross-referencing names and dates. She discovered that Project Echo wasn't just a rogue operation. It was part of a larger network of classified programs operating under the guise of national security. Many of the individuals involved held high-ranking positions in government agencies, making them untouchable, or so they thought. Daniel, on the other hand, focused on gathering external evidence. Using his contacts in journalism and law enforcement, he tracked down former employees of the facility where Leavitt was being held. One of them, a technician named Alex Grant, agreed to meet with him under strict confidentiality. "I don't know much," Alex admitted nervously, glancing around the dimly lit diner where they sat. "But I saw things I can't unsee. People disappearing, strange experiments, lies upon lies. Whatever they're doing in there, it's wrong." Daniel nodded, jotting down notes. "Did you ever hear about someone named Leavitt?" Alex hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, I think so. He's one of the current subjects. They've been pushing him hard, harder than usual. Word is, he's causing trouble." That confirmed it. Leavitt was still alive, still fighting. Daniel thanked Alex and promised to keep his identity secret. As he left the diner, he felt a surge of urgency. They had to act fast. Back at Rachel's apartment, the two of them devised a plan. They would leak the documents to multiple news outlets simultaneously, ensuring maximum exposure. At the same time, Daniel would publish an investigative report, detailing everything they had uncovered. The goal was to create a media firestorm so intense that even the most powerful figures couldn't ignore it. But they also knew they needed to get Leavitt out. He was the key witness, the living proof of what Project Echo was capable of. Without him, their story might be dismissed as speculation. Rachel suggested reaching out to a trusted ally within the facility, a low-level employee sympathetic to their cause. She tapped into her old network and found someone willing to help, a janitor named Kevin Doyle. Kevin wasn't privy to the inner workings of Project Echo, but he had access to certain areas of the building and could provide valuable intel. Through coded messages, Rachel instructed him to gather information about Leavitt's location and the layout of the facility. In return, she promised him protection once the story broke. Inside the facility, Leavitt prepared for his next move. He had memorized the guards' routines, noting when shifts changed and which corridors were least patrolled. During one session, he intentionally provoked Claire, knowing it would result in stricter supervision. Sure enough, the guards doubled, their presence outside his cell, giving him fewer opportunities to act. But Leavitt was patient. He waited for the right moment, biding his time until the perfect opportunity presented itself. Finally, during a late-night transfer between rooms, chaos erupted. An alarm blared, its piercing sound echoing through the halls. Lights flashed, red, and voices shouted orders. Someone had triggered a distraction, a deliberate act designed to draw attention away from Leavitt's location. Seizing the chance, Leavitt broke free from his escort, shoving one of the guards into the wall. He sprinted down the corridor, dodging startled staff members and ducking into alcoves whenever footsteps approached. His heart pounded as he navigated the labyrinthine building, relying on memory and instinct to guide him. Just as he reached what he believed to be an exit, a figure stepped into his path. It was Rachel Sloane, her face pale but resolute. "Come with me," she whispered urgently. "There's no time to explain." Leavitt hesitated, unsure whether to trust her, but the sound of approaching guards made up his mind. He followed, Rachel through hidden passageways and utility tunnels, emerging into the cool night air moments later. Outside, a car idled nearby, its engine humming softly. Behind the wheel sat Daniel Meyer, his camera ready to capture the moment. As Leavitt climbed into the back seat, Rachel turned to him. "We're getting you out of here," she said firmly. "But you need to tell us everything. Every detail matters." Leavitt nodded, his hands trembling as adrenaline coursed through his veins. For the first time in weeks, he felt a glimmer of hope. Whatever came next, he wasn't alone anymore. The car sped away from the facility, its tires crunching over gravel as it disappeared into the darkness. Leavitt sat in the back seat, his body tense and his mind racing. He glanced at Rachel Sloane, who was sitting beside him, her expression a mix of determination and fear. In the front seat, Daniel Meyer gripped the steering wheel tightly, his eyes scanning the rearview mirror for any sign of pursuit. For a moment, no one spoke. The only sounds were the hum of the engine and the occasional rustle of leaves as the wind swept through the trees lining the road. Finally, Daniel broke the silence. "We don't have much time," he said, his voice low but urgent. "They'll realize you're gone soon enough." Leavitt nodded, though his thoughts were still scattered. Everything had happened so quickly. The escape, the car, these two strangers risking their lives to help him. It felt surreal, like stepping out of a nightmare into an uncertain reality. "What now?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Rachel turned to face him, her tone firm, but kind. "Now we expose them. You've got the evidence, Leavitt. Your story is the key to bringing Project Echo down." Leavitt swallowed hard, the weight of her words sinking in. He had spent weeks trapped in that facility, enduring tests and interrogations, designed to break him. But now he realized his ordeal wasn't just about survival, it was about justice. If they could get the truth out, maybe others wouldn't have to suffer the way he did. Daniel pulled off the main road and onto a dirt path, parking the car behind a cluster of bushes to avoid detection. He turned off the engine and looked back at Leavitt. "Listen carefully," he said. "We're going to take you to a safe location where we can record your testimony. Once we have everything documented, we'll release it to the press. By tomorrow morning, this story will be everywhere." Leavitt nodded again, though doubt lingered in his mind. Could they really pull this off? Would anyone believe him? He pushed those thoughts aside, reminding himself that he had no choice but to try. Okay, he said finally. Let's do it. The safe house was a small cabin tucked deep in the woods, far from prying eyes. Inside, a camera and lighting equipment were set up in the living room. Daniel handed Leavitt a cup of water and gestured toward the chair positioned in front of the camera. Take your time, he said. Tell us everything, what happened to you, what you saw, how they treated you. Don't leave anything out. Leavitt took a deep breath, steadying himself. For the next hour, he recounted his experience in vivid detail. He described the courtroom incident, his arrest by Agent Bondi, and the horrifying experiments conducted on him at the facility. He talked about Claire Harper, the simulations, the drugs, and the psychological torture designed to push him to his limits. As he spoke, his voice grew stronger, fueled by anger and resolve. When he finished, Daniel reviewed the footage, nodding approvingly. This is perfect, he said. It's raw, real, and undeniable. With this, we can make people listen. Rachel stepped forward, holding a laptop. I've already sent the encrypted files you smuggled out to several trusted journalists, she explained. They're working on verifying the information as we speak. By the time we release your video, the groundwork will already be laid. Leavitt felt a surge of gratitude toward them. These two strangers had risked everything to help him, driven not by personal gain, but by a desire to uncover the truth. Thank you, he said quietly. I don't know what I'd have done without you. Rachel smiled faintly. You're not alone in this, Leavitt. There are people fighting back against corruption, even if it doesn't always seem like it. Tonight, you're one of them. As dawn broke, the first wave of reports began to surface online. News outlets across the country published articles detailing the existence of Project Echo, citing leaked documents and anonymous sources. Social media exploded with reactions as videos and screenshots of the leaked evidence spread like wildfire. Within hours, hashtags like Tyas Expose Echo and Free Leavitt trended globally, drawing attention from lawmakers, activists, and ordinary citizens alike. Daniel's investigative report hit the internet shortly after, accompanied by Leavitt's video testimony. The combination of hard evidence and a first-hand account proved devastating. Viewers watched in shock as Leavitt described the horrors he endured, his words painting a chilling picture of unchecked power and ethical violations. Calls for accountability echoed across every platform, demanding answers from government officials and corporate sponsors tied to the program. The backlash was immediate and overwhelming. Protesters gathered outside government buildings, holding signs and chanting slogans. Lawmakers scrambled to distance themselves from Project Echo, calling for investigations and hearings. Even some of the program's key figures attempted to deny involvement, though the mounting evidence made their claims increasingly implausible. Meanwhile, Leavitt found himself thrust into the spotlight. Journalists bombarded him with interview requests, while supporters hailed him as a symbol of resistance against tyranny. At first, he struggled to adjust to his newfound fame, unsure how to navigate the chaos surrounding him. But with Rachel and Daniel by his side, he began to embrace his role in exposing the truth. One evening, as they sat together in the cabin, Leavitt reflected on everything that had happened. I never thought I'd end up here, he admitted, shaking his head. All I did was crack a stupid joke on a podcast. Who would have guessed it'd lead to all this? Rachel leaned forward, her expression thoughtful. Sometimes change starts with something small, a single action, a single voice. Yours happened to be louder than most. Leavitt chuckled softly, though there was a hint of sadness in his eyes. Yeah, well, it came at a cost. I lost weeks of my life in that place. And for what? To prove they could break me? No. Daniel interjected firmly. You proved something else. You showed that even when they try to crush you, you can fight back. That's why people are listening now. Not because of what they did to you, but because of what you did despite it. Leavitt fell silent, letting the words sink in. For so long he had seen himself as a victim, someone powerless against forces beyond his control. But now, he realized, he had become something more. A catalyst for change, however unintentional, in day. The weeks that followed, The fallout from Project Echo continued to unfold. Congressional hearings exposed the program's unethical practices, leading to arrests and resignations among its leadership. Whistleblowers came forward, adding their voices to the growing chorus of outrage. Public pressure forced reforms within intelligence agencies, ensuring greater transparency and oversight. Leavitt returned to his life, though it was forever changed. He resumed hosting his podcast, using it as a platform to discuss issues of freedom, accountability, and human rights. His audience grew exponentially, drawn by his authenticity and passion. Though scars remained, both physical and emotional, he carried them as reminders of what he had overcome. Rachel and Daniel stayed in touch, continuing their work to hold powerful institutions accountable. Together, the three of them formed an unlikely alliance united by a shared mission to shed light on the shadows of power. On a quiet afternoon, as Leavitt stood outside the cabin looking out at the forest, he felt a sense of peace he hadn't known in months. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in a long time, he believed in the possibility of a better future. Turning to Rachel and Daniel, who were laughing about something nearby, he smiled faintly. "Freedom isn't free," he murmured to himself. "But damn, is it worth fighting for?"